Sometimes I wish I made videos more often, but the upside is that when I do make a video, you know it's something I care about. So, I have this phobia. It's a thing that occasionally appears in fictional media, and it causes me to become, let us say, very unhappy. I'm not actually going to say what the phobia is, because I'm not a fool. Hello, friends and strangers! Here's a gun that only works on me! What I will say about this phobia is it's not one of the standard ones, and it's not, like, associated with unethical behavior, so it's not something that I can reasonably expect people to tag for, even when they're being conscientious. And it's not something that happens in the real world. So just to make this less abstract, less confusing, something I can actually talk about, let's say that the thing I don't like is a purple cow. I'm not afraid of purple cows. I think I'd like to see one. But for our purposes right now, I fear that I might be one. So say I'm going to watch a new movie, and I go on IMDb for the Parent's Guide or on doesthedogdie.com, which is a great website, and there's going to be warnings for snakes and sharks and spiders, probably not cows. And if there were a tag for cows, 90% of the time, I'm going to be okay. Maybe 9% of the time, I'm going to go, that cow was a little bit purple. Okay, I'm fine. But then that 1% of the time, it's going to mess me up for multiple days. This is not something the world is going to accommodate for me. It couldn't if it tried. There's too many of us and too many weird squicks. It's just part of my experience of being a person. And it's hard, and it's stupid, and it doesn't come up very often. Luckily, I have this great friend who knows me really well, and lately this friend and I have been watching a show that's new to both of us. And sometimes I pull ahead of my friend, and sometimes they pull ahead of me, and we will leave each other comments that are spoilered out with timestamps on them. So whoever is ahead still gets to talk about what they're seeing, and whoever's behind can click through when they get to those timestamps and see what's up. So on the occasion this story is about, my friend had gotten ahead of me in the show and popped out of the spoiler tags to tell me, hey, just so you know, this episode is wall-to-wall purple cows. And I went, oh boy, and went about my day. But after about an hour, I came to realize that I was slowly becoming overwhelmed with this feeling of dread. Because I really like this show, and underneath everything else I was doing, I was kind of subconsciously steeling myself to eventually go ahead and watch this episode anyway. I was like, I'm a grown-up. Surely I can watch something scary, and then recover, and be okay. None of this is real. Nobody is getting hurt. I really like this show. Obviously, I'm still going to watch it. But I did not want to. And so my dumb, fleshy brain was sending out signals to the rest of my body like, warning, imminent danger, be prepared to scream very loud and run very fast. There's Cheerio dust in this cup. Maybe fleshy brain is somebody else's phobia trigger. I also made a joke about guns. I hope if you're watching this, you have a good friend who watched it first. Anyway, being in that kind of heightened state for no reason is not pleasant or helpful, and so in order to make myself feel normal again, I had to just make the decision that I was not going to watch this episode, but that maybe I would try to find a transcript of it instead, so then I could read along and still experience the story, but not have to be in it. And as soon as I made that decision, I started to calm down again. My friend was very supportive. In fact, I want to read part of this message. It says, "This is a thing we watch for fun, and it's totally a choice you can make to go, hey, that's not a fun prospect. That's also a thing grown-ups do." So shout out to my pal. And a couple days later, I was able to track down a transcript. So shout out also to fans who make websites and wikis and know how to pull out captions and edit them. And shout out to IP owners who aren't in a hurry to shut that kind of thing down. You're doing an accessibility. So when I was ready, I was able to set aside some time to just sit down, read through the transcript, and experience the story and the dialogue elements without having to actually look at or listen to the thing that really bothered me. Here's what I experienced. I was mentally fine. I was happy. There were jokes that I laughed at, and during the scary part, my head was on fire, and my hands were ice cold and shaking, and my pulse was racing. And then when it was done, I was okay again. Whenever stuff about trigger warnings or content notes comes up in the discourse, people always make it about, like, college students trying to avoid thinking about scary things. And then, of course, other people come in saying, actually, trauma is real, it's a physical reaction, and the warning just gives you the chance to pick a time and place to engage with the stuff. All of that conversation has been going back and forth for years. I do think it's very funny that we pick on college students in particular. Just speaking for myself, I know that around 18 years old or so was when I was the most obnoxious about this, and it was actually through the experience of going to university that I got better about it. Around that time, I had a tendency to get actually angry if I ever encountered a depiction of a purple cow in media, or any number of other much more serious topics, especially around depictions of violence. I remember feeling that an author or an artist who had scared me had done something ethically wrong. Like, not just unpleasant to me personally, but evil in a cosmological way. Like, they took a world that didn't have that thing in there, and they put it there. I have had to learn over time that people have reasons for making texts that are scary to me that have nothing to do with me, because they like them. For good and normal reasons, because there's artistry involved, or because they're actually processing a fear or a trauma by turning it into an art object, or because they like splatter patterns, or they like purple cows, and purple cows are cool, actually, and I'm the weird one. Sometimes you're the weird one, and sometimes that's actually a huge relief because it means the rest of the world is not out to get you, they're just vibing. I was wrong about that stuff. My feelings were valid. I was very young. Fortunately, I wasn't famous. All that being said, I like trigger warnings when I can get them, obviously. In my own work, I tend to prefer the term content note as a convention. I just like that it doesn't make assumptions about how anyone's going to feel about the thing. It's just information. X contains Y. What you do with that is your business. But I think trigger is an appropriate word for what happened here in my story, and I think warning is an appropriate word for what I got from my friend. And having been forewarned, I was able to engage with this piece of art in a time and a way where I was going to be all right. And please observe, the warning part did not change the trigger part. That baby still went off. My head still caught fire. I was happy, and I was shaking uncontrollably. Being a person with a body is some nonsense. I don't get to make a choice about this. It's possible that I could work on my terrible purple cow phobia with my therapist, but frankly, it's not a high priority. Even assuming I was talking to her about the actual source of my discomfort, which is much less silly, it's still something that's fictional, and I have stuff to do, you know? But many of us, many of you, are out here living our lives, having to deal with much more difficult, much more pervasive, much more actually dangerous traumas. And all of us are at different points in learning our coping skills for that. And during the process of learning those coping skills, our bodies and our brains are gonna do what bodies and brains do. It's nice that we have ways of helping each other out, or at least trying. Before I wrap up here, I want to talk about the other way that this can go. A couple of weeks after my success with that transcript, I ran into my phobia again, but this time it surprised me. Knowing that this was going to be an ongoing plot point in that show, I got ahead of my friend anyway. Hubris was my downfall. The thing was very purple, and it was very cow, and it was sudden, and it was a lot. And then I just kind of felt really exceptionally terrible every time I was alone with my thoughts, for days. And it turns out I was right the first time. I am a grown-up, and I have coping skills, and I handled it. But it sucked. Talking about this is a hard needle to thread, because I do not want to imply any kind of judgment for those of us who have not yet found coping skills that actually work. The grown-up thing is really a red herring. For me, I'm talking about fears that stem from my childhood, and so it's easy to assume that at some point I should have crossed a threshold where everything just automatically became okay. But, that's not how this works, is it? Being okay is an adult thing, opting out is an adult thing, and getting jacked up by something is, unfortunately, also an adult thing. On the other hand, I also really don't like making a big whiny deal about how I saw something scary in my computer, and it pierced me. It's embarrassing. I didn't die, I just felt bad. It's fine, I handled it. Shut up. You're crying. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying with all of this is keep using content notes, because when they work, it's really good. And keep making and enjoying whatever art you like, and use doesthedogdie.com. It's a great website. You can contribute to it with stuff from movies that you've seen. And if you're lucky enough to have friends who know about your weird media anxieties that are too obscure to go on websites like that, and they help you navigate them, tell them thank you. That's the end of this. And hopefully this final bit will soon mark this video as a relic of a bygone era. But meanwhile, we have the world that we have. So in the description, I've put links to Doctors Without Borders and the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So if you, like me, are doing mostly okay enough to have weird hypothetical fears more than real and present terrors, please consider donating. I woke up like this. It's probably enough takes of that. I'm a grown-up. Surely I can... I'm a big boy. Okay, my fan is there like a wiki tongues? Don't think about that right now.